Hello to all my incredible listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Nick Lugo Show. If you're looking to start a podcast in 2022, now is the time, and this is the place to be. Today, I brought on Colin Gray, also known as the podcast host, also known as the owner of thepodcasthost.com, who is able to, show people how to start podcasts. He really knows this. He knows the stuff. He's written books on it, and I actually bought his book called Podcast Growth the other day, and I've been reading it like crazy. It's really, really good, and he's got some really, really great knowledge. So if you're really looking to start a podcast in 2022, if you're really trying to get started and really market it properly, grow it correctly, and be consistent as you're doing it, then Colin Gray is the person to listen to, and this podcast is the place to be. So I give you Colin Gray. But yes, I'm definitely going to be asking you a lot of questions today about how to grow a podcast, how to work with a podcast, how to create a podcast, all of these things. And the first thing that I'd definitely like to ask is, how long do people typically like their shows to last? So, you when you do your podcast online, it's around 20 minutes, but do people like an hour, 3 hours, 4 hours?
How long do you go generally, Nick?
About an hour to an hour 30.
An hour to an hour 30. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Like you just said, our show, Podcraft, often aims for 20 minutes. Usually Matthew and I go a bit longer. We'll maybe end up half an hour or 40 minutes even. You aim for an hour. Sometimes you go an hour and a half. We don't have a schedule we have to stick to, which is the brilliant thing. And you can change it up as well. Like you can go 20 minutes one week and an hour the next week. And I do find that from what we hear, listeners do like to at least have an expectation. So like they'll want to know that your show is on average half an hour, let's say. But you might go 20 one week, 40 the next week, but they know that you're not going to go 2 hours because that's not your style. So they know you can kind of fit it into a certain time frame. So, but genuinely, it doesn't matter. You can make it a unique thing about your show to go just 5 or 10 minutes. Sure, that's the uniqueness. Or you can make it unique. You go really in depth and go an hour and a half, like you said there. So it really is up to the podcaster and really what you want to achieve with it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I look at Joe Rogan and I say, you know what? He's doing a great job, but I can't pull off a 3-hour podcast. I just can't do it. So
get exhausted after that time.
Oh yeah, man. So let me ask you. So I think this is a great place to start. And just in general, first of all, you run courses, you help people create podcasts, you do, entire one-on-one help sessions and all of these things. What do you think is the biggest mistake that people make when they start out?
Usually the biggest mistake is over complication. It's making things too complicated right from the off. It's trying to do too many things all at the very beginning. Because this is another great thing about podcasts, and everyone, because it's easy to jump into in general, people do jump in with both feet and they go all in and they try and do it all, and they hear these great shows online, the stuff that they listen to, and they try and emulate everything that they do. Often that creeps in the gear and the tools, like trying to use a really good mic with a really good mixer and like try to do mix minus calls and bring in 3 different guests and live stream it all at the same time. And it's just that we see is generally a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for burning out because you're trying to run too many things. And often
I did that in the beginning, actually.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. You seem like a keen, enthusiastic guy that can learn quick, and that's a definite strength. But the downside of that is you'll end up trying to do too much.
So, what do you think people should start off with in the beginning? Like, to start off, how complicated should it get?
I think you start off with a decent quality mic, but a USB mic. So you get yourself something like the Samsung Q2U or a Rode Podcaster,
or a Yeti
USB mics. Yeah. Different budgets. So Q2U is the cheap one. Rode Podcaster is a bit more expensive, but a bit better. So you plug that into your computer and you just start going. And that is it. Like, honestly, the gear, that is all you need. Recording software, keep it simple as well. Like, you can use something like Audacity for recording and editing. That's free as well. So it's pretty simple. Or you can use, with the tool we run, we started Alitu. That's our podcast maker tool for the purpose of making it as quick and simple as possible. So
I'll spell that out.
ALITU is alitu.com. And it's designed to record, to do a lot of the editing for you, the cleanup and publishing too. So we're all about the simplicity. I'm all about the simplicity. Helping anyone podcast is just keep as many complications out. Keep the chain as simple as possible.
And you're also a very humble man. Okay. So I like to talk about tools, tips, and strategies. And I found, and one of the reasons I brought you on this podcast is you have incredible tools. Your tools are top notch. So I highly suggest, if you're looking to get into Audacity, which is a audio editing platform, then this man, Colin Gray, thepodcasthost.com, has online courses, which he made himself, to help you with your skills in Audacity. So I highly suggest you check that out. Also, I highly suggest you check out, and we're going to be talking about this as we go through, but this man just released a book. I bought his book online. It is called What's it called?
Podcast Growth.
Podcast Growth. There we go. And
simple.
it was too simple. Exactly. That was why I forgot it. But yeah, it has over 80 different strategies, growth strategies. And again, he recommends that you do only one per week, implement one strategy per week, and then watch it build up over time so you decrease the complications. So tell me, what are, let's say, the things that people should start doing right away? So yes, we're getting into it now. They decrease the complications. What are sort of the next steps that they should take?
I mean, the bit that I think a lot of people miss is the planning side of things. So I'm curious, Nick, actually, like how did you go about planning? Like when you first were started to decide to create a podcast, how did you think about what the show would contain, like what it would sound like?
That's a funny question. I didn't. I'm more of a act first and ask for forgiveness later. So yeah, branding and all that stuff was never on my mind.
Yeah. And again, that's a strength. Like that is a strength, because the other, I mean, we talked earlier on about the biggest mistake. One of them, so the biggest one I would say is the overcomplication side of things. But the other is to procrastinate and take too long planning and take too long deciding to make it perfect. And that kills a lot of podcasts as well. But the planning stuff is worthwhile doing. It's the brand, like you said, it's the audience. I bet you know this though, intrinsically. Like who do you speak to? Like, do you know what your audience is?
Yeah, I mean, I intrinsically I know, and I'm trying to form that at the moment. But yeah, definitely like young college kids who are really trying to, who are kind of lost and are trying to really understand, okay, what are the best tools, tactics, and strategies that I should live with in my life?
Yeah, perfect. So that's the first thing. Think about who it is you're speaking to. And this is a really good process to go through. So who is it you're speaking to? Who is it you want to talk to? Who is it you want to reach? And then the next part of it is the problem. So what problem is it you're solving? Do you know what that is for your guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just people being lost, right? You notice that kids are going into college really, really struggling with their lives and not really knowing what to do. And they end up falling towards, peer pressure and things of that sort. I just want to be the positive peer pressure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Perfect. Do you have a way how do you solve that? Like there might be, what do you have in mind in terms of the way you solve that problem for them? How do you help them stop being lost?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, it's really difficult to really nail that down. And at the moment, I haven't nailed that down. I've been spending the last month or two a few weeks trying to figure out branding and things of that sort. So what I'm pretty much doing from now on is, yes, I started this about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, so it's definitely brand new. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the tools, tactics, and strategies of the people that have made it huge. So Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Jocko Willink, Joe Rogan, you name all of them, and you try to parse out, okay, what did Tim Ferriss do that I didn't, or the people who failed didn't? What does Joe Rogan do? And yeah, trying to figure out the marketing tactics, their daily routines, habits, strategies, and do all the research on that, and then hopefully share that with the world.
Right. Cool. Okay. So that you've kind of described the pretty much, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the people that start a podcast. You'll find maybe something like a quarter will know their audience. They'll know the problems to try to solve, and they'll have a solution already. They'll know how they're going to solve it. Like maybe it's because they already were a teacher of a certain thing, or they have worked in a certain job for 20 years. So they've got the experience. They know how to solve this problem. But a whole bunch of other podcasters, maybe 3/4, don't know that solution yet. And the trick, in many ways, is to figure that out while getting started. Don't let that stop you starting. So you've done exactly that. Now. You've got started. You know who you're speaking to. That's the big one. You know the problem you're going to solve, which is equally big, and the solution that'll come once you figure it out. So once you start speaking to those people, once you start putting things out there into the world, you get the feedback from your audience about what it is they want solved. Like, what solution they're looking for.
Think about it. At the moment, I'm near podcast 100. So like it took me about 100 podcasts to figure this out. And I ask myself this question all the time, and I'll kick it back to you. What should be the initial strategy? Because yes, we're trying to find that balance between overthinking and over planning and never getting started versus getting started and not having to think about branding until your 100th podcast. So, first of all, I'd like to ask this question first, and then we'll get into that. What percentage of podcasts don't make it past, let's say, the first 5 episodes, if you know that? And then, yes, how do we strike the balance between the two?
Yeah, it changes a lot over the years, but the old urban legend was that half of all podcasts never make it past episode 7. So that's where most of podcasts die off. And if you look at different podcast hosts, you see like some of the free platforms. So Anchor, for example, is a free platform. They've got, what are the numbers again? It's something like 80+%. So more than 5% of their podcasts only have 1 episode on them. It's just people messing around, people starting it and thinking this would be a great thing to do, but then giving up straight away, pretty much.
Well, so do you think that people should make a commitment, right? Because implicit in there is that because it's free, that there's no commitment, and therefore people just kind of drop it off. So do you think people should go and pay for the platform? I paid for Captivate. I think it was $19.99 a month to get started. So
I think there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of people in the industry are very down on free platforms like Anchor, but I think they serve a good purpose in letting people play around. And I don't think there's anything wrong with recording an episode and seeing how you find it. But I think to get anywhere, you do need to make this plan. You do need to make that commitment. You do need to think, right, I'm going to create a season. I'm going to create my first season of the podcast. It's going to be 8 episodes, 10 episodes, 12 episodes, whatever you fancy. It can even be just 4 or 5. And record that, plan that whole season out, record it, and then know that by the end of it, at least you will have, this chunk of material that you can give out to anyone. You can that's a real good thing, an evergreen resource that you have created for, the world that you can use. So even if it doesn't go anywhere from there, you've still achieved something. You've still won by creating that thing.
And that's something I'm doing at the moment. Like right now I'm recorded. So it is October 22nd. And I'm recorded up until February. So yes, it takes off so much of a load. The reason why I started for about 30 episodes and then stopped after a few months. And the reason why I stopped after a few months and then eventually ended up picking it back up again was because it was so stressful every week trying to get guests. In my case, for other people, it's trying to come up with a plan on what to create every single week. And it was so stressful that every single Friday I would be hitting up random people. Hey, can we have an episode for Sunday? And it was brutal, and it kind of led me to burn out. So I really, really like this idea of having a bunch planned out.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Can we just finish that? Go back to the planning side of things. There is a 4th part to that I think is really valuable.
Sure.
Like we said, you've got the audience, so you know who you're speaking to. You know the problem that you're solving for them. You know the solution. Once you figure that out, you'll have a solution that's unique to you. But that uniqueness is that 4th part. That solution, maybe there's a few people out there that can give that solution, but what is the way that you're going to give it in a unique way? Like, what is your unique experience, your unique background, your unique personality, maybe even a unique approach that makes it, you are the one to listen to for this type of solution or for this type of problem. I think that's something that a lot of people miss as well. But that's really the selling point. That's the basis of your marketing and your growth, because that's what goes into the description, the title, the artwork, all that stuff. That's kind of what, that's what hooks people in and says, this is the show that I need to listen to because I know it's for me and it's given in this unique way that speaks to me as well.
That is the thing I'm definitely trying to figure out. And I think this is a difficult question because we're trying to find a systematic way to create uniqueness. But are there any tools, tips, strategies for anybody who's trying to create that uniqueness and could sort of figure it out?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a few different ways to do it. So I think, there's the kind of standard topic-based ones at first. So you can have a particular angle on a topic. So you might go quite niche. You might think, I'm going to do politics. I want to do a politics show, but actually I'm going to do politics for people in Scotland. So that's where I'm from, Scottish politics. And that narrows you right down into a kind of a small niche, which is quite unique. But you can also do an angle on it. So it might be politics not for, a particular niche, but it's actually your personality and angle on it, which might be politics for, older people, an elderly view on politics, or politics for teenagers or something like that. So it's kind of narrows it down as well, but on the angle rather than the topic. Other ways are format as well. Like format can be really good, actually, in terms of uniqueness. Like, have you come across somebody called John Lee Dumas?
No.
He is kind of famous in the podcast space for being one of the first guys to do a really successful daily podcast. He grew his show around the fact that it was coming out every single day. He would release a 20-minute episode. And he did that for about 2 or 3 years, releasing it on a daily basis, which is a brutal schedule to stick to. But he managed it, and he kept that coming out. So frequency can work. Length, we mentioned that already. A really short show, like maybe 3-minute news bulletin every single day, or it's like a 3-hour epic like Dan Carlin does on Hardcore History. So the format helps too. And the other part of that is the hosts. So like you're doing an interview show just now, which is great, but it might be that you can get somebody else on as well. Like a unique interview show could be 2 hosts interviewing one person, or even 3 hosts all talking together, or co-hosted, or a round table, that kind of stuff. So there's quite a few different ways to make it unique around those ways. So yeah, I mean, we've got an article on this actually that lists a whole bunch of different methods for being unique. So I'll send you over the link for that for your show notes if that's useful.
Definitely. And what is the so I'm assuming it's thepodcasthost.com/something. What would it be?
Well, the long one would be thepodcasthost.com / well, actually, no, I'm not even going to give you that because you won't remember that. So let's do thepodcasthost.com / unique, and I'll create that afterwards. Make sure.
Unique. All right. Love that. Love that. Now let's get a little bit into the weed works. And I think this is something that's really important for people getting started, because I didn't figure this out until very recently. Titles and show notes. So how does one create the best titles, and how does one create the best show notes?
Yeah, so there's a few, talking of big mistakes in podcasting. One of the biggest ones, and it's kind of died off now, but in the olden days, and I still see people doing it, so it's worth mentioning. People used to put in episode numbers in the titles all the time. It would be like episode 100 / blah, blah, blah. And that just, you've only got a limited bit of space in the podcast directory. So you need to use every character you can to try and grab people and make them listen to your show. So putting in episode 100 or whatever, it's just a waste of space in that title. So make sure you don't do that in the first place. The second one is that, for example, I'm sure you don't do it, Nick, but some people on this interview might put the episode title and it would start with the name Colin Gray. It would start with my name, - blah, 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 something after it. And again, that's actually not that useful either, because the vast majority of people, practically everyone that listens to your show, won't have a clue who I am. So my name means nothing to them. And yet so many interview shows still start every single episode title with the name of the person.
So give me the underlying reason behind that. So you're saying the reason why I shouldn't do that and shouldn't put the name is because that tiny little space should be packed with as much value as possible?
Exactly. Your goal with every single episode title that you put out there is to grab the listener within the first 5, 10, 15, 20 characters, as soon as possible. And the way to do that is to list the problem that you're solving. It goes back to the design of the podcast. Every episode should be designed in the same way. It's solving a problem. It's grabbing that person, telling them, look, this is what I'm going to help you with. This is why it's worth your time listening. I know you're selfish out there. So I need to make it worth your time to listen. Here's why you need to listen, because I'm going to solve this problem for you with this solution. So it goes back to the same thing. So get that up front straight away. It's what is this podcast going to solve for that person?
And now I must ask the question for SEO, keywords, all of these things. That is the real thing that people have to worry about. And I've never really taken a good look at these keywords or anything like that. But at the same time, it seems like those words, the questions, the words, the things that you're going to ask are literally out on the internet for you. People have done the research for you on which words are best to use, which questions are best to use, which questions are people asking. What sites do you recommend to do that? And first of all, how can people traverse the very expensiveness of SEO platforms?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the ones that I use most often, there's two free ones for sure. Have you ever come across Answer the Public, for example?
I came across it this morning and used it to title a few of my videos.
Nice. So that's a great site, Answer the Public. You type in any keyword in there and it will give you all of the most common questions asked in that topic. So that's the first one to try. The next one is actually just Google itself. So Google AdWords so Google AdWords is basically the adverts that you see in Google search. And if you set up a little account for this, which takes just a few clicks, if you've got a Google account, you can actually get data on all of the searches that happen in Google. So if you type in, what it be called these days, it changes all the time. I think it's Google Keyword Tool right now. Yeah, if you type in Google Keyword Tool, it pops up. It's the Keyword Planner, I think the name is now, actually. And that'll show you all the trends. And in fact, Google Trends as well. So trends.google.com helps you with that too. It doesn't get quite as specific, but it can give you really nice trends over time if you type in a keyword. So if I type in podcasting, I can see that the searches for that peaked last year, for example. I know that during the pandemic, a lot more people were searching for podcasts during that time, and they've kind of died off a little bit over Christmas and started climbing up again. So you can get an idea of what people are looking for with that. Have you ever used any of the Google tools, Nick, for them?
No.
Get in there and use them.
Get in there.
So one more is, possibly two. One more is certainly Buzzsumo. Buzzsumo is a great one.
Spell that.
Yeah, it's BUZZSUMO. So Buzzsumo. And that is, it's more of a social media research tool. So if you go onto buzzsumo.com, type in your keyword. So again, if I go there and type in podcasting, it'll show you all of the resources like blog posts, podcast episodes, videos on YouTube that have been most shared on social media. And what that does for you is shows you what people are most interested in reading, writing, watching about, so that you can then double down on that. You can find something, you can create something related to it, or create something even better than the most shared one. So that's a really good one for just seeing what's kind of on people's minds right now.
And also, yeah, I think the biggest one is just detecting patterns. Like, okay, you know what? Do people prefer 2-minute long videos on their Twitter feed or 7-minute long videos? And that's something you could easily figure out with such a device.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, perfect for that. Absolutely.
And you had one more?
Yeah, last one is an oldie, but a goodie. Do you use Quora at all?
Quora, like Quora?
That's it, exactly, yes.
No.
Yeah. Quora. So Quora is, did it start out as, it might have started out as like the Yahoo Answers type thing. It's basically just a site, Quora.com, where you go on and people can type in questions. And again, if you go over to that site and you type in search at the top, type in your keyword, you can see all these questions that people have typed into Quora about your topic. So you can find out all the most commonly asked questions about your topic. And every single one of those questions is an episode for your podcast, because that's what people are asking. That's what real people out there in the world are wondering about. So that's what to cover. So yeah, that's how to come across the searchable topics.
Yeah, I really liked answerthepublic.com. That was really, really great. And Quora has the same thing. So yeah, answerthepublic.com literally says, what are the most asked questions? And again, those are just names for your podcast or titles for your podcast. And same thing with Quora. Okay, now let's get into show notes. So why are show notes important, first of all? Because I never thought they were important until recently. And then how do you make the best show notes?
Yeah, show notes have two levels to them, I think. On one level, they are about discoverability. They're about being found by new people. And then on the second level, they're about making the people who find you and listen to you much more loyal to your show because they get more value out of it. So I think there's both of those sides to it. What do you do in your show notes out of interest, Nick? How do you put them together?
No comment.
Not very much so far then.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten there yet.
Yeah. It's totally understandable. It's the thing that everyone misses out because they're the total bane of any podcaster's life. Like you don't get into podcasting to write, do you? You get into
Yeah.
So having to do an interview and then go away and write something related to the exact same topic, it's just not what you want to do. So so the value of it in the first place, realizing why it's worth putting together something, at least for show notes. The discoverability side of things, you've talked about it already a bit here, SEO. It's the fact that podcasting is brilliant, but the one thing it's not so good at is discoverability. It's being found. Like, there's way, like not infinitely, but there's magnitudes more people searching on Google in text than are going to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and type in something into search on Spotify. So if you have no written material related to your podcast, you're cutting out an enormous amount of people that aren't searching in the podcast app to find something to answer their question. So it's really just that discoverability. It's vastly more people that can find your podcast through text than in audio. So we tend to write show notes, for example, for every single episode to answer the question. So people will find an article on like what is the best podcast microphone, and we'll have a podcast episode embedded into that. But they'll find it in text, they'll read it through in text a lot bit, and then they'll spot the episode, and then they'll listen to the episode because they'll want to get the more in-depth information. And that's what turns people into listeners. We've captured them from a text search into being a podcast listener. So that's the discoverability side of it. The other side,
okay, keep going.
The other side is the loyalty part. So, I mean, the strength and the bane of podcasting is that people can listen on the go. You know, you're in the car, you've got someone that entertains you for an hour while you're driving to work. But the trouble with that is that often people will hear some great things, but they can't really do anything about it right there and then. They're driving the car, they can't even make a note. They're doing all sorts of different stuff that they can't really action the material right then. So more often than not, when I hear something great in a podcast, what I'll do is I'll kind of just take a mental note that there was something great in this episode that I want to review. And then I'll go to their website later on and I'll review it. I'll go through and I'll browse through their show notes and I'll find the links to these things that they mentioned. And that's what will actually get me the material. That's what will help me get the value out of that episode. So it's a review tool. It's a tool to help the listener get more from your show because they can go back, they can see what you talked about, they can look at the resources and they can do something with it. So it's encouraging action, really. That's kind of a big purpose of them too.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, when people, yes, it's really difficult to take notes while you're listening to podcasts. And I was also recommended along that line to transcribe my episodes and have that also available on the website. Do you also suggest that?
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a lovely idea for accessibility purposes, if nothing else. So just letting people who are hard of hearing, it seems a lot of people kind of question that. They're like, why would somebody who is, hearing impaired be interested in podcasts because they're audio only? But it's a whole world of content that is unavailable to somebody who either is hard of hearing or is entirely deaf. So it's only fair, and it's to make that accessible to as many people as you can. And transcripts can do that as well.
And also people say for transcripts, like it just, I think it also improves on SEO, but I'm not sure about that.
It's debatable. It depends. I mean, a dedicated blog post would be better by a long shot because it's much more well written. It's written for reading, which transcripts aren't often. Transcripts are often not a great read because they're full of all the kind of idiosyncrasies of our speech. And it tends to be more condensed as well and more useful. So a dedicated blog post is better. But a transcript is better than no blog post at all or no show notes at all. So definitely it's better for SEO than not having any show notes at all. And often I find just having a transcript and editing it down, condensing it down to something great, that can work quite well, save you a bit of time.
Okay, makes sense. Now let's get into slight transition, which would be social media. So social media and also email, actually. I guess we should start with email. So for email, should people have email lists? Why are email lists important? And this is also something I overlooked. Why should anyone have an email list?
Yeah, I mean, the general principle is that podcasting is great for building loyalty. People come and find you. They come and listen to your show every week. But all through that, you're relying on people to come to you. You know, you're pulling them towards you. But anything can happen in their life. They'll be busy. They might be interested in other shows, and therefore they don't remember to come and check in on the show. Whereas with email, if you can get somebody onto your email list, suddenly you are able to push to them. It's not just a pull medium, it's push. And that means you can push emails out to them. And that means you can keep them up to date on new content, tell them, new episodes out. You can summarize that episode. You can really encourage them by telling them about the problems and the solutions and blah, 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 that what's in that episode to really bring them to listen and turn them into a loyal listener. And
yeah, well, that was the thing that I really liked. It's you're in control of the medium, right? Yeah. Like when you're in Apple Podcasts or YouTube or whatever, the algorithm is essentially dictating whether or not you get seen or whether or not you don't get seen. And in email, it's completely different.
Yeah, totally. It's where you control it. Yeah, totally. And it lets you push out the other stuff as well, because presumably anyone that starts a podcast has a goal. Like, what do you have a goal for listeners of your podcast now? Like, what do you want them to do at the end of the day?
At the end of the podcast itself, or
somebody listens to your show 5-10 episodes. What's your goal for them? Do you have something you want them to do, or something you want to sell them, or anything like that? What's your goal with your listeners?
Not really. I mean, mine is just more give them a little bit of structure. Nothing more than that.
So it's so at the moment it's growth, it's loyalty.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, email works for that. But then, later on, maybe you will write a book or something, and you want to let them know about that. Or maybe you'll start a YouTube channel to go alongside the podcast, or maybe you'll create a product, which is a course or something like that. And as soon as you, if you have people on your email list, you can actually start to tell them about that in a really useful way. You can give away some value. You can teach them some things and say, get more of this in my course or my book. So email is just a place where you can double down on the value you give to people in exchange for hopefully getting them to take the action you want them to, whatever that goal is for your podcast.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, email definitely grabs their attention, and you're saying, therefore, it's a perfect place to advertise your product. Makes perfect sense. Okay. Now let's get into the social media aspect of it. So personally, I don't do any social media posts for my podcast, but at the moment I'm trying to improve that game too. So, how should people run their social medias?
So this is one part that I feel I'm less qualified to advise on. It's one part that we haven't really we haven't cracked that well either, to be honest. I can relate though when I've seen people do it well, and it's something that I've always planned to improve as well. But I mean, the people I see podcasting working well in social media when it's smartly repurposed media. So you get tools like Headliner. Headliner is a really good tool which you can pop an audio clip into, and it'll create a video based on it, and it'll help you create lots of different videos and different variations, different lengths, and you can take an hour-long show and cut out maybe 3 or 4 different clips from it, so you can start sharing that on social. And I find they work really well. Like if you put on a 30-second or a minute clip on Instagram, pop it onto Twitter, onto all sorts of different places, and suddenly that starts to grow some curiosity, some interest around your show. And if you choose the right clips, little clips that incite a bit of, ask a question, open a loop, and just make people really curious about what's coming next, that's the kind of thing I think can draw you in quite well.
Interesting. Yeah. What is the name of that resource?
Headliner.
And I think, yes, it's slightly difficult to get people to listen to an hour and a half podcast, especially. And that's why I see a lot of people do like 30-minute podcasts, 40-minute podcasts, but I think they're missing the point to some degree, right? To some degree, yes, like you're going to get more listeners, but also you just have to get them interested to listen to a 1 hour and 30-minute podcast. Like Joe Rogan does this all the time with this 3-hour-long podcast. And all you have to do is generate the interest, and people are going to listen to the long form.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a big part of that interest is that, having that media there that makes them curious and shows them that there's something worthwhile listening to in that full length. And I don't know, how many shows do you listen to that are that long?
Let's see. Tim Ferriss show around an hour 30 to 2 hours. The Impact Theory podcast with Tom Bilyeu, absolutely love. That one's more of like an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And Jocko Willing podcast, which is around 3 hours. So I listen to a bunch of those.
And how dense do you think the material is in there? Do you think they manage to pack it in every minute, or is it kind of could be more condensed?
Joe Rogan is a funny example because no. Jocko Willink, yes, actually, he is like just a different type of human being. I still debating whether or not he is a human being. So yes, but I'm not on that level.
Yeah, but that's the good point around it, really, that people listen to Joe Rogan even though it's kind of waffly, it kind of goes off track. It's definitely not very dense in terms of the entertainment or the value, but they love him. It's the personality, it is the random rambles that they like about it. Goes with them. Yeah, Tim does it as well. Tim Ferriss and Jocko Willink. They're just very good at questions and very good at focus and very good at really drilling down to the detail. And so somehow they manage to pack value into just every minute of that hour and a half. And
it's really funny. Like, they have such strong personalities, right? You think of like Joe Rogan, even though he doesn't have, a Jocko Willink strong personality, he's just like the perfect example of like the bumbling idiot who actually asks some pretty good questions and is kind of smart, And then Tim Ferriss is just Tim Ferriss. Like, everyone has these really strong personalities, and that's why we love them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what podcasting is great for. It's getting to know these people and their personalities and loving them for the way they are and the idiosyncrasies and the weirdness and all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I think that part is actually really, really wonderful. But I did want to go back to so we were talking about marketing, catching people's attention, things of that sort. And yes, long form podcast. The most important thing that I've found is keeping someone's attention within the first minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that. So what is your advice on intros, starting the podcast, and keeping someone for those first 2 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, that's hitting the nail on the head there. And it's something that a lot of people don't think about, actually, is that curiosity at the start. I mean, I think that the intro is really key. The intro is really important. And there's a few different things that people do which work really well. Like, how do you introduce a podcast, Nick? Do you do any kind of teasers, or do you do just a decent intro at the start? Do you talk about much of what's coming up on the show?
Yeah, so I talk about what's coming up. I talk about the bio of the person, and I give just a little teaser on what questions we're going to answer in that podcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about actually teasing a few of the real hits that's going to come up. Like, today we talk about this, and this, and actually this problem that I know you have. Nick here comes up with an answer, which I think you'll find really intriguing. It sounds a bit cheesy, but that's the thing that opens a loop in the person's head, and they're like, oh, I need to hear about that. So having that in a kind of 1 to 3 minute intro where you give a lot of the bio, that's an interesting one as well, actually, because the biography often, one of the other mistakes, we're talking about mistakes of podcasters here, a podcaster makes, is they'll just start a show and they'll go, hey, how are you doing, Nick? So tell me about yourself. And they'll just start it like that. And the person will have to, take a stab at what this person wants to hear. And they might start, when I was 2, I moved to this place and I bought a rabbit and did this. Really, they can wander on and like nothing interesting to the listener whatsoever. And that can be 10 minutes of the start of the show, which loses you 90% of your audience. Whereas if you give a really good bio at the start, you do a bit of research, you say, right, in 30 seconds, I'm going to give all the credibility this person needs. I'm going to give a good bit of background, how they got to where they are. And then I'm going to jump straight into a really strong question. It's going to be something that the listener wants to hear right away. And it's going to be, again, problem, solution, all that kind of stuff. So I think the bio is actually really important for you to give that out yourself, for you to control that part and then jump into the meat of the content as early as possible. That's something that a lot of people miss out, actually.
Well, that's something I've actually been debating really recently. So yes, I do a bio in the beginning, and that sort of the purpose of the bio, obviously legitimacy, credibility, but at the same time, it familiarizes yourself with that person. So for example, if I do an intro on Colin Gray, I want to talk about all the amazing successful things that you've done and ask them to keep, to go to the podcasthost.com, because everybody should go to the podcasthost.com. But at the same time, I wonder whether or not in the actual episode, like I did to start this episode, not sure if I'm going to cut it out based on your answer to this question, if we should say, Colin Gray, what is your story? How did you get into this? All of these things. Is that necessary, or is the bio and the credibility part in the intro good enough?
It depends. I think it totally depends. I would often say that it's not necessary. I would often say that part can be skipped, but it does depend a little bit on the person. Like sometimes actually, so giving away the trade secrets here, like that story that I told at the start there, I've told that about 100 times, if not 1,000. It's the start to talks that I do, all that kind of stuff, like talking about going through education and starting the courses and stuff like that. And I tell that because I know that that's kind of the part of my story that people are interested in. So I don't talk about the rabbit I had when I was 12 and all that kind of stuff. It's really just sort of diving straight in. So it depends on the guest. It depends on how well they know what their potential audience are interested in. Because you get a lot of people that are not very new, not very experienced with this. They're new to podcasting or they're new to interviews, and they won't really know how to keep it on track, or they won't even really know how to keep it interesting. And certainly I don't hit it every time either, no matter how many times I've done this. So it depends. I would often, though, do your own introduction and then just jump straight into a question. Yeah, for sure. Depending on whether that first answer that the person gave was quite entertaining or good or not.
Got it. I think one thing that I'm definitely starting to realize is, first of all, yes, good strategy, jump into questions. Second of all, bad strategy to ask them tell me how you got here. Some generalized, tell me about your life, tell me what's going on, stuff like that, or tell me how how it all started. Rather, I think it's better, if you're going to ask a story question and agree or disagree, to tell them, how did you get into productivity? How did you get into podcasting? And when you ask such a really specific question, it gives that backstory, that nice little padding, but then at the same time, it gets you into the topic.
Exactly. And that's what you did. You were quite specific about it. So yeah, that's great. I mean, it's down to just getting the stuff that your listeners are interested in. It's all down to that. It's all down to making sure that the stuff stays on track. And a lot of that is around control. And control has a kind of negative connotations.
Yeah.
But when it's your podcast, it's your content, it's your audience, there's nothing wrong with staying really in control of the content. And the worst thing about an interview show is that you give up a lot of control, because you're asking a person a question and you've got no control over what answer they give, no control over how long they take, how boring they are, all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with keeping more of that control. And that can even translate down to, I often introduce people. When I first talk to somebody before an interview, I often say to them things like, now, I might interrupt you halfway through this interview, halfway through a question. I might just say, oh, sorry, that you've gone off track a little bit here. Don't worry about that. If I do that, it's not your fault. I know my listeners. I know the topics that they'll be really interested in. So please don't be offended, but I'll be kind of guiding us quite strongly here, because I know really what my listeners want to hear. So don't be put off if I do that. And that sets the stage for you to be able to keep that control, to really guide the conversation, to keep people down to short answers. And I'll often even say, try and keep your answers down to a minute or 2 minutes or something, because that keeps it snappy and keeps it conversational. So yeah, there's nothing to control.
I like that. I mean, my purpose here is to be the guide and to bring out the answers that people want to hear. So I completely agree. And I guess the big question that tails right off of that is, how do you get data? How do you get feedback from your audience itself? Because the problem with podcasting is it's just so ambiguous, and you can't really tell based off of what you posted why people liked it. So how do you get feedback?
I think there's a few ways. There's a few ways that's definitely worked for us over the years. One is social media, talking back to social media. I think that's a really quick and easy way to get it. That's often our call to action at the end of Podcraft, for example. That's our show about how to run a podcast. I'll say, so get in touch. Tell me, an answer to this question. And here's the trick, actually, is to be specific. Because if you ask people at the end of a podcast, like, I'd love to hear what you think. Did you like this? Did you like this? They'll not tell you anything because it's not specific enough. But see if you say something really specific, like, so today we talked about microphones. What microphone? Get on Twitter and get me at the podcast host and tell me what microphone. Either if you've bought a microphone, tell me what microphone you bought. If you're thinking about it, tell me what microphone you're thinking about buying. Keep it super specific like that, and that's how to get people to get in touch. Make it really clear and really easy for them to actually answer. So yeah, it's definitely a good way.
Okay, awesome. And then data. Do you guys keep any sort of data on your website, on podcasts, anything like that?
Yeah, from there, I mean, going up from that, the next level we do is we do a lot of surveys, actually, and that gets us a ton of data. So we'll, at the end of each season, for example, we'll probably run a survey just about every single season. We'll put out maybe 3 to 5 questions on a Typeform survey and direct people over there. And we'll do a wee giveaway often, like give away a microphone or something similar. And that often gets us a few hundred, responses every single season, which is gold, that stuff. Like asking people, what do you want to hear more about? What do you think we can improve on? How would you change our format if you could? That kind of stuff. That's great stuff. That have you got much data from your audience so far, Nick?
Not really. I think that's super important. And yeah, I mean, I have the data I use Anchor at the moment. So, I get the data from that, how much my audience is, male, female, age, things of that sort, but nothing in depth. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, those stats are good. Those stats are useful to know that you're, whether you're growing or where you're being listened to. But I think it is the personal stuff. It's when you can manage to get people to tell you what they like listening to, what problems they're having, what they want you to talk about, that kind of stuff. That's the really interesting stuff.
So I think we should definitely get into hosting platforms. So I use Anchor to host, and yes, they give me decent data, but not incredible data. What is the advantage of getting a hosting platform that costs money? Is it better data? Do they have better data? Or, is there any other benefit?
Yeah, I mean, the data, in terms of the stats, everyone wants to see the stats. Everyone wants to see how many listeners they've got. But in all honesty, it doesn't make any difference, really, does it? Like, you're not doing anything differently based on knowing that you've got 305 listeners this episode compared to 297 the episode before.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pretend that it's not interesting or that you don't want that number to grow. So definitely. But I mean, when it comes down to the high level stats, they'll show you things like places, like countries you're listened to and devices you're being listened to on, all of that stuff. Again, does that tie into your content very much? Probably not a huge deal. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But the things you'll pay for, I mean, things like Anchor, being a free platform, what's the old adage? If you're not paying for the product, then you are the product.
Yeah.
So with Anchor being free and the other free platforms too, it means you're the product. So that means your podcast is going to have advertising in it, or you're going to you don't own your content. They might be able to use it elsewhere, or they might just shut down tomorrow because actually they're not making any money, and that has happened to podcasting platforms in the past. So the benefit really is that commitment to taking it seriously, that some extra tools for sure. Like a lot of the big podcast hosts that you pay for have got much better growth tools, much better workflow tools, that kind of stuff. It's the control. It's the fact that you know that you own your feed because you pay for it, and they'll let you move it away. They'll let you bring it in. They'll let you, change the URL, all that kind of stuff.
Got it.
And the fact that it's just, it's paid for. It's sustainable. It's not going to disappear overnight, or less likely to, certainly.
Interesting. If Anchor fell apart overnight, God, that's a nightmare. That's really
to be fair, it's probably unlikely in the case of Anchor because it's owned by Spotify now, so you're probably safe enough. But
nice.
Yeah, there's definitely been seen to be ownership issues and stuff like that with Anchor in the past, just due to the fact that they, the advertising model, the trying to move your show away from them, that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how much of that's the case these days, but it was definitely murmurs in the past.
Got it. Yeah, I wonder. So, how are they actually gaining value for me as a podcast host, because I don't pay any money for it?
Well, they've got numbers that they're trying to hit. So they're trying to grow their podcast numbers on their platform because that's part of the value of the platform. They're trying to sell advertising. So they've got, they'll sell advertising to big brands based on the fact that we've got 50,000 podcasts on our platform, kind of thing. It's more than that, way more than that, actually. So the value they get is really to putting advertising into your show, and they take a cut of the payment that they get for that.
Got it. Yeah, they really, really push the monetization, like getting some ads, getting started, things of that sort. So I could see what you mean.
Yeah, but okay. On the other hand, again, I said earlier, I don't have anything particular against Anchor for dabbling, for learning, for getting into it and messing around 5-10 episodes. And then once you decide you want to take it a bit more seriously and really kind of take control over your show, then by all means upgrade at that point. So yeah, it's all paths into this.
Okay. I like that. So, Colin Gray, to lead them off, give them a call to action. I think there is a call to action. First of all, for people who are trying to start a podcast, what should people really, do to get started? And, what are you really big tips to get started? And then also, where should they find you and why should they find you? Because I think they should definitely find you.
Thanks very much, Nick. It's been great to come on the show. Thanks. And I think you're doing some great stuff here. Actually, you say you haven't figured it out yet, but you're coming across so like really good interview style. I think the content you're creating is brilliant. So yeah, you should be proud of everything you've built here as well.
Thank you.
But yeah, thanks for the platform. We are over at thepodcasthost.com, and I think the steps to take are we've talked through them. We've talked through designing your podcast. Think about that problem, solution, uniqueness. That triplet that really starts it off. Get yourself that basic USB mic. Don't go too complicated at the start. Just go for the Samsung Q2U or something similar. Plug it into your computer and start speaking. If you do want an easy platform to run it on, then do check out Alitu, ALITU.com. That's our podcast maker, which is does all the cleanup. It helps you with your editing. You can record your calls in there, all that stuff. So it's a really easy way to make a podcast. And it's all there really in our How to Start guide, which is probably the best starting point. So yeah, if you want to find out more, go over to thepodcasthost.com/start and you'll find it all there.
I love it. And first of all, there are things that I learned since researching this man, Colin Gray, thepodcasthost.com, that I did not know until right now. I think I have 94 episodes recorded. So I really, really suggest, find some help. Like if you're going to get started, definitely follow this man's method, because how many people have you dealt with over the years? You've probably dealt with hundreds, so many people. So I think that there's so much value in what you're offering. So amazing. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and everybody check out thepodcasthost.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nick Lugo Show with Colin Gray. To support this podcast, please give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or subscribe to my YouTube channel. These things help more than you know. And so I'll leave you with a quote from Sun Tzu. Every battle is won before it is fought. Go out there, make your podcast, and, plan ahead of time and really, really, do it. Just go out and do it. So thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time.